Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 99 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. Today, Kris and I have the honor of talking with Keith O'Brien from PageOne. Keith, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks, Dustin.
Yeah, glad you could join us. We have a lot to talk about today, for sure. It's fun talking with people that are heavily involved in the Amazon space because it's changing every single day, always new tactics to employ. So can't wait to pick your brain, see what you're doing with your clients. But
Awesome.
before we dive into all that, why don't you let everybody know a little bit about yourself, how you got into the space, and what you're doing with PageOne right now?
Sure. Well, the important stuff, I'm a single dad, long-time girlfriend, reader, traveler, well, before COVID, right? So,
Yeah.
it is. I think I traveled 3 months a year for the last 5-6 years, and this year it's been numbing. But anyway, I've been in the space for about 6.5 years in the Amazon world. Background is marketing, personal development, training and coaching, things like that. My first entry, back in the day, I sold all kinds of things through direct response marketing, but Amazon space, my first entry, I was partner in the first review company that existed called I Love to Review. We launched Q4 of 2014, and I partnered into that company, and then I took it over as CEO and ran it, and that was fun. We helped a lot of people make a lot of money. We were very strictly white ad and kind of built it after Vine, but you guys knew what happened. 6 months later, every soccer mom with a Facebook group had a review group, and the industry got crazy, and so when the TOS changed, we shut that down in October of 2016. We had, realistically what happened, we had thousands of clients all over the world. Those were back in the easy days. We could put any product on PageOne in 2 weeks and it would stay if it was good. But what we did that was a little different, like we were like a little mini agency. We just had one service. And so our account managers were consultants, right? So we knew we could put any product onto the map, but we knew what a listing had to look like in order for it to stay there, right? So we just gave free consulting advice on listing optimization, photography, all these things as just part of our service. So when we shut that down, we said, okay, we know this stuff fairly well, and we rolled into the agency and really built it up a service at a time. We started doing SEO and copywriting, bolted on photography and design and creative about 6 months later. 6 months later, bolted on advertising management. And then about 2 years ago, started full brand management. And so now we do it all full service.
That's great. I got to go back because I got some things to unpack in your story, because you brought up some really great memories. Both Kris and I started around that 2014 time as well in our own Amazon journeys. And while it was different, you could go and find the reviewers on Amazon. Their emails were there, and you could just reach out to the top reviewers, send them stuff. It was a fascinating time, and it's obviously very different now.
Yeah, that was the nature of the service, right? So you really, we just made it easier for you guys, right? So instead of spending all day chasing down, your family and friends and cousins and all the top reviewers, there was people that were ripping the top reviewer list off of Amazon and circulating it, and it was the wild, wild west. We just streamlined it, right? We made it easy. But we also put a firewall between our customers and the reviewers, a lot like Vine, so you couldn't talk to them. And my idealistic self knew that the industry was going to crash, but like the idealistic part of me was like, oh, we'll be the one left standing when all the ones doing black hat crap, So that obviously wasn't the case, right? But It's all right.
Yeah, but you were able to evolve from there, and I like your approach. How you talked about you grew your agency sort of one service at a time. I'm sure mastering each one along the way and how you can help out your clients, which is a really nice approach.
Yeah, well, truth be told, wasn't 100% sure what we were going to do in that transition, and we had so many people back then, 4.5 years ago. We had built our own keyword tool. There wasn't any keyword tools. The ones that were on the market weren't very good, and so people just didn't really even understand how to write optimized copy. 4.5 years ago, so we were just cranking that out like it was nuts, right? And it kind of bought us some time to figure out where we wanted to direct our focus. So I'd like to take all the credit for the strategic plan, but it wasn't totally like that.
So it was around 2016 that you started PageOne. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, we actually started as a company called Market Hustle, and then the photography company we had separate as Seller Photo, and we rebranded and rolled them both into as PageOne in 2019.
I was telling Kris before he came out, I was like, that is a great name.
Yeah.
That's what everyone says. How do I get onto PageOne? How do I get onto PageOne?
We're paying for it, but it's yeah. I couldn't believe PageOne.com wasn't had been parked and not done anything with. I'm still trying to buy it. It's been years, right? But the cool thing is we rank regardless of how you search for it. So
yeah, great name.
Thank you.
It's also interesting what you brought up earlier, how when you were running the review company, how you were also consulting on other things like their listings and all that. And that similar to what Kris and I do. I mean, we talk to people all the time who are looking to automate their advertising. And the first thing we do is look at their listing. Sure. If there's no reviews or the listing's bad, we're like, you do not need to be starting running ads yet. I mean, that you have to get everything optimized before you do, or you're just going to throw money down the trash. So I'd love to just now talk about what you're doing to help conversion rates on listings. Like what are your best practices, or what are the easy wins, the main things you go after first?
Yeah, I think some of this stuff is not going to be that's the thing on Amazon, right? Like everyone's looking for the silver bullet, the gimmicks, and and you'd think people will get tired of hearing like the same stuff, but the bottom line is before you can run a freaking flea flicker, you got to master the fundamentals of blocking and tackling, and if you don't, then the audibles don't really matter, because you need to have the core foundation in place. And so I think for us, getting people to your listing is all about the copy and the keywords, right? The discoverability. So it starts with the title, moves to the bullets and the description and back end, and we just go a piece at a time. And I think the reality is people see all kinds of listings that produce, right? And so it's all this confusion when they're searching for a product, like, oh, this one's making all this money, it must be done 100% right. And the reality is there's always more factors than what you see on the screen. So, a nice, tight, optimized title, focusing on the best, 2 or 3 core keyword phrases, getting it so it's organized well, so it's optimized for mobile search as well. And that part is a bit of an art, right? Trying to reorder the words so that you get as many core keywords and phrase matches as you possibly can in the right order. So once you've nailed that, then you start, going down through the bullets and, but I think, once you've got your keywords, even if your copy isn't amazing, the biggest mover on Amazon is your images, for sure. We just did an annual review yesterday with a client we've been managing for a year. And the two biggest factors is we protected their brand, where we got, some of their buy box issues resolved. But the conversion rate store wide went from 10.96 to 20.4 in a year, right? So with all their best sellers in the mid-30s, right? So and that's largely due to the images.
How much are you implementing testing when you do this? I mean, are you A/B testing different images and checking the conversion rate, or do you feel like you know what's going to help that conversion rate?
Oh, I'm smart enough to know that I don't know. So I will say this: like with accounts that have like manager experiments, we're getting into it on the back end. I'm just a fan of testing like in the environment that the purchase is going to be made, rather than testing outside of Amazon. I just think like, the old quantum physics, the nature of the observer influences the nature of the experiment, right? So, I think what we do test a lot is image order, right? So, which is almost no one does, right? So I think, look, again, like blocking and tackling core foundations, fundamentals, like when you get a good image stack in place, it's an improved image stack, right? Then it's the little micro changes. So like I think what we found is the most impactful spot to test is number 2. Your main image, hero image, you only have so much room to negotiate if you want to play by the rules. But that second image, once they're in your listing, that first impact of what you hit them with second, we've tested the comparison charts, move into a lifestyle as number 2, and it's really interesting to see the differences.
If you were creating a new listing or what would that second image be? Would it be something like a comparison chart, or would you do like a lifestyle photo or infographic? What is getting the most bang there?
What's the rating of this podcast? Is it G, PG, R? What?
You can say whatever.
It's the shitty answer is it depends on the product, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm a big believer. Like I think the biggest mistake, and I'll fold in this answer that sellers make is they sell what the product does as opposed to what the product does for people, right? So we're not like, yes, most buyers need enough factual data to compare it against other things, especially features. But the vast majority of products we're buying to fill an emotional need, a status movement, how that product makes us feel. So the more you can get into the emotional appeal on the images, the faster, the better it is. I'll do a plug for something not related, but one of my favorite new books, I'm like 3/4 of the way through, is called Building a Story Brand. It's freaking amazing. It's really, really good. And it goes through these 7 emotional triggers, and it's the basis to like every movie, TV show. It's a lot like kind of the hero's journey and that kind of thing. But getting into the psychology of the buyer is super important, and the harder and quicker you can hit them with how the product will make them feel, the more likely they are to go to image 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and down through your listing.
I'm about to get that book. I just pulled it up here.
Yeah, great. It's my favorite book I've read this year, I think.
It's a great point that you bring up. Number 1, testing the image order that's something that I haven't done enough. I mean, and I didn't even think of the importance of it. You think you put them in there and they see every one of them, but they clearly don't. I mean, it's your opportunity to tell a story. So maybe if your pictures are out of order, people are leaving your story before they get to the end there, which is it's a great point. But I also like the point you mentioned about hitting the emotional aspects with people. I think the challenge, and this can go into something about we're talking about later about when it's the right time to outsource, but I think the challenge for a lot of sellers, Kris and I talk about this a lot, is half of this business is very analytical. It's like if you talk about the advertising and stuff like that, where it's all data, keywords, it's all analytical. And some people are more prone to that, or receptive to that. And then the other half is so creative. Like the way you make your images and the way you tell your story. And I think people are good at one or the other usually. And so they have more fun doing one or the other. Like I can tell you, and I think Kris is on the same side with me, is we love product research. We love finding products. We love making cool pictures and, getting excited about the story, but we get really bored with the analytical part.
Yeah. For sure. I'm the same way. I love talking about, I can read the data. I love going through the data and drawing insights from the data, but don't ask me to put the data together. Like, I'm just like, oh, it's mind numbing. Right. But I think like inside of, I would agree with that with a little caveat. I think like 4 or 5 years ago, advertising on Amazon was much more straightforward. And, now things like relevancy have such a huge impact. And this relevancy isn't always something you see just in the data, without having some creative, actually sitting and thinking about what that means beyond what the percentages say. So, I think, relevancy matters. It's all about that, niching it down. I think I think it always has just been mind-boggling to me, right? So here you are, let's say, it doesn't matter what size business, but you spend X numbers of thousands of dollars and generally months of your life, right? Or if not a year of your life to source this product and, bang your head against the wall dealing with China and overseas. Right now, you'll pay more to freight your products across than you will to do professional photography, right?
Great point.
I mean,
that's so true, though.
2 times as much now, right? I mean, we're not the cheapest in town, but like with models, we have like studios, and we have a built out kitchen studio. We have a built out living room, bedroom, bathroom in our studio office in Florida. So we don't have to leave for a lot, but we still do a lot of location stuff. But, with models, with graphics, on location or in the studio, you're all in for under $2K. I mean, you can't get 100 products from China for $2,000 today. It's just nuts. It's nuts. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but you guys get the point.
Well, we tell sellers all the time, spend the money in your images. Like, you have to do that. That's super important. That's what people see. They create that connection. You have to spend money on those. You can't use Canva and do it yourself. Like, yeah.
Well, like if you ask most people, hey, how many units do you expect to sell this year? I don't know, 5,000. All right, well, amortize it. Your first year, it's 40 cents an image, 40 cents a sale per image. It's just crazy, right? And if you do it well, they're going to last, right? We'll have to update them if at all, but certainly for years.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point about spending thousands on just shipping to get your product there, and nobody even blinks an eye at that. But then they're like, "Oh my God, images! They're
on Fiverr." Yeah, then they're on Fiverr going, "Who can I get to do it the cheapest?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been there. I mean, we've done. Yeah. I've personally done it every which way. Had them professionally made them myself. I'm getting luckier now because my son is so into Photoshop, and he's getting really good at it. So I've got a little in-house employee now that's developing, which is nice. But I mean, if you don't have those skills yourself, you absolutely need to outsource it and make that difference, because it can make, because I think it goes to another point. And you brought this up earlier, and I want to touch on this a little bit more. Because I think that most Amazon sellers don't really understand this concept of relevancy score that Amazon's giving. Because we hear it all the time. We'll be looking at someone's campaigns with them on a demo or an onboarding call, and they'll be like, "I'm getting 0 impressions for this keyword that I've got them, and my bid's high." It's like, well, Amazon's either not even indexing you at all for that word, or your relevancy score is super low. And people don't even realize that if they have a good relevancy score, they might win with a cheaper bid than everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I did It's true, and I think that you got to just like take a look at what the search results look like and see if you belong there, right? And if you know, like I'm a huge Seth Godin fan, but like if you're the purple cow on search results, you're probably not going to get indexed, right? So you know, you want to be the purple cow in the sea of all when someone's searching for cows, right? Not when someone's searching for cats, right?
I like that.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So are you selecting just a couple main keywords to really focus on optimizing the listing around? Or do you ever change that? Like, do you ever, if something's not working, do you ever go maybe longer tail or a different way and sort of optimize listing around that?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think that this is an area that, like, as good as you can do ahead of time, you always have to go back and keep looking, right? Because the real test is going to see what the market actually says, right? And you know, you may have a mid to long tail phrase that shows up over some time, you know, through search terms and things like that, or that you might start ranking for. If you know, you should certainly be running reverse ASINs on your listings, you know, on the regular basis, so you can see what the market's actually starting to rank you for. So yeah, I think, you know, when you're first starting out, it's easier to kind of start with, like, if you've got that, you know, that archery target, you're going to have a certain number of kind of core keywords that are in that middle. And sometimes it just depends on the competition level. Sometimes it's better to have that the number of different core phrases being larger. Sometimes it's better to take, you know, 2 or 3 and then build up all the mid tail and long tail that are surrounding that and focus in on owning that little, you know, sector keywords. Like, for example, you know, coccyx pillow for back pain, right? So that's a fairly long tail keyword. But my guess is that actually has coccyx pillow for back. Probably has some pretty big search volume, right? So you might stay on coccyx pillow for back pain, lower back coccyx pillow, seat cushion, you know, and you may never change off of that 2-phrase keyword for a while before you start going donut pillow and, you know, all these other things, right? Doesn't mean to leave them out. I'd have it in the back end. I'd probably have it in my title, but, you know, you might focus your advertising on this little cluster to get yourself launched in the movement, just depending on what your budget is.
When do you update the listing, and how often are you doing that? Like, for myself, you know, just create the listing, and I don't even think about adding. Like, I don't want to change anything. I'm too scared I'm going to mess something up. So, like, when do you update the listing, or when do you add more keywords? How do you know to do that?
I mean, the truth probably is we probably don't do it quite enough, and because it does take some work, right? Like, you got to filter through all these reports, and I think we may tweak the title if we see something that comes up that we just missed, right? You know, if anything on the bullets, we make them just continuously try to make them shorter, you know, so the readability is better. And you know, it's just different personalities. There's a small percentage of people that are going to read every word on a listing page, and the vast majority are going to read none of the words other than the title, right? So, but I think we tweak the title more than anything if we see something that really is important, or the back end search terms, because a lot of times that back end, the default is you just dump crap in there that you couldn't fit in the listing, which is probably not best practices. So the thing I think we look for probably the most is identifying things that can redirect advertising. So what I mean by that is giving away the good stuff here. So so there's all these shelves when it comes to keyword position ranking. Like, obviously the name of the game, we're driving search results so that we can rank the highest as we possibly can for free, right? So, you know, like as an Amazon seller, you should know like what shows up on most screens without having to scroll, right? The old above the fold, right? And it's generally the first, you know, 1 through 6, plus top of search, sponsored ad, sponsored brand ad, and now the video, right? Or editorial recommendations, whatever. So like your conversion rate and sales at 1 through 6 on the keyword should drastically outperform 7 through 48, right? Which is the bottom of the page. You should know for your category how many listings show up on each page, which is a little bit different for each category. And so we like to look for these where we can do micro movements and apply some advertising pressure. So if you're sitting like position 49 through 60, call that the top of page 2, with a little bit of focused advertising effort, you should be able to pop to page 1, and that should make a difference in your sales. If you're sitting at 7 to 15, that's a little harder nut to crack to get to number 6, but you should know which phrases are on those kind of fringes, right? Those edges, so that you can redirect some advertising dollars to make some improvements.
That's really good. And I think another thing, you brought up a really good point here also, is that there is a definite benefit in your conversion rate when you're like the top line. And I think that might be counterintuitive to a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people think if somebody sees their listing, then they're going to have an equal conversion rate, as opposed to, I mean, even in advertising, like top of page multiplier,
100%.
if you get that number 1 ad spot, your conversion rate is higher than everybody else in those 100%. Spots. And so I think that's a good point that you bring up, that if you're close, you can apply a little effort and you can make a big difference.
Yeah, because what happens a lot, you know, guys, is there's some people that will always just click on the sponsored ads because they come up first, right? Like they never go past the first couple of results, just like Google, right? Yeah. I think the Google stats were 1/3, 2/3 from advertising to organic. And then a lot of times you'll pass the first ones, you'll scroll through, but then you notice that all of them look kind of the same, and then you like go back up by the one that's first, right? So you know, you get down to the bottom of page 1, you're like, oh, they're all kind of the same. Let's go back to the one that's most people like.
It's so weird, the psychology. I mean, number one, we're in this space so much that, I mean, like you, me, Kris, I mean, we'll go out of our way to not click an ad.
Depends on what product it is.
Yeah, depends on but we know what we're doing to that person. We're like, no, don't do it. But then I watch my kids on there, and they just click. It's always the first one that comes up. And the psychology, I mean, most people, they don't know it's an ad, and they assume it's the best. I mean, they just trust that. Why would Amazon not put something bad in front of me at the top? And it's amazing. So that right there just shows the importance of making sure you take care of all the basics so that you are optimized in every way, your listing and your advertising, so that you get those opportunities to be in those spots.
And believe it or not, there are keyword phrases that nobody advertises on. There still are, right? I did a coaching call this morning, and these guys, I mean, they're doing pretty well. 15, 20K a month. Got a nice little product suite going. No home run products yet, but certainly they've got potential. And I'm like, well, what are you guys doing for advertising? It didn't really work for us. I don't really know. I was like, oh, let me take a little peek. So like one of their mid-range volume keywords, 0 ads, 0. And I'm like, oh my God, you could bid a nickel. Amazon has to give it to you. It's relevant. Right. You're the only bidder. Like they have to show you. You're going to convert sales at like a 0.2% ACoS, man. It was nuts. It was nuts. So there are those little gems, and you got to kind of pay attention. You always, if you can find those, God bless you.
Yes, I got to be on the lookout for these terms that exist out there with no search volume. You'd think, with all the talk about how competitive everything is, that there would be no products left available that anybody could sell, and all advertising spots are too expensive. But that's totally not the case. There's so much opportunity out there. And it is.
I mean, look, we all know. Look, it's harder today than it was when we all started. There's no question about it.
No question.
Right?
None.
You got to be smarter. You probably have to have a little bit more money. You know, you got to think a little more creatively. You got to look longer term. You know, but these are all kind of good things, you know, in business, right?
Mhm.
And it makes people think twice before jumping into the space. But you know, when you do, you should have, you know, you need a good plan and you need to see it through, and it needs to be vetted. There's so much help these days that just people that actually know what they're doing, right? That just didn't exist 5 years ago, right?
So true.
It just wasn't around. I mean, it was around, but it was all, you know, courses and stuff. There wasn't a lot of people giving away free stuff. You know?
No, and now it's all, and we talk about this a lot, but that's the beauty of this community of people who sell on Amazon is there's a lot of people out there giving free information out, a lot of podcasts like this one, you know, where people are talking. But I mean, just from our personal perspective, from Kris and myself, when we started this podcast, our own businesses have benefited a ton because of just the networking and talking to people, you know, learning a tip just from talking to you and testing out image order. I mean, that's a great thing that I've never really done, and that will be tested now, you know, just to see if that can make a difference. But okay, on this topic, so we can sort of the last thing we'll talk about is when is the right time to outsource and to just give these tasks to somebody else, to an expert? Because I mean, a lot of people starting these businesses as side hustles and stuff. I mean, I can tell you, I was a side hustle, and then it quickly became not a side hustle. It was a full-time business. So when is a good time to outsource a lot of this stuff?
I think it's different. I think it's unique for every business, right? So, but you guys have people listen to your podcast from the side hustle guy up through, you know, CMOs at big companies, right? So I think it just depends on the individual or the company, right? So I think if you suck at it, you should absolutely get help, right? There's no points for putting crappy work forward in the marketplace, right? So if you think you're gonna, you know, tape together a white box, you know, with some, you know, construction paper and use your iPhone, like you just should get help for photos. And it doesn't have to be us. It doesn't have to be a professional agency. Just don't hire like your Aunt Sally who took pictures at your wedding, because they're going to be horrible at product photography, you know? So I think if you're not good at it, you should consider outsourcing. I think if you don't love it, like you get into it, maybe even you're good at it, right? But you're actually focused on growing your business, then eventually you're going to resent that work, and you should probably find someone else to help you, right? So there's probably no area that's more true other than advertising, right? You know, get with a company like a Solo that provides help, and find someone that can support you, right? And I think the other big thing is when you're clear about where you're headed and you're ready to leverage resources to gift you back some time so that you can go focus on things that'll actually grow your brand, right? So all the things we've talked about are really important, but photography is not gonna 10x your business, right? What's gonna 10x your business is getting new products to market that are well thought out, you know, applying some pressure with extending your catalog. And that stuff all takes a lot of time, right? Expanding marketplaces, things like that. So, you know, like we have good friends of mine, 8-figure sellers that outsource all of their creative to us. They're operational, really friggin' geniuses. They've been selling on Amazon 18, 19 years. Went from head start to 8 figures, and they're just newest brand in like 15 months. And we do all their content, all their creative, everything. They run their own advertising. They do all their own operations, and they outsource that bit to us, right? So, yeah, I think those are the big ones, right? Or if you're in a company where you don't have a dedicated, where you're maybe the e-commerce director, but you don't have a dedicated Amazon person, you are 100% of the time leaving meat on the table.
Whew, you are not lying there. because it's a different animal. I mean, you may even in the e-commerce space itself, Amazon is so different than, you know, your own website or Facebook ads or anything else like that. It's just so different. You're 100% right on that. Good.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, anybody who's listening to this right now, who's now thinking, okay, this all makes sense. I probably should be outsourcing a lot of this stuff, and they want to get in touch with you. Let them know. How do they get in touch with you, and how can they take advantage of your services?
So Kris actually takes all of my calls. So you just call Kris.
No.
Kris at slozo.com. So the website is the best place by far. We have account managers that will reconnect with all sellers. It's Page.One, not PageOne.com, but Page.One. If you want to connect with me personally, my best platform is LinkedIn. I'm at Keith B. O'Brien. Put the B in the middle there, but I should come up in a search. You know, on our website, you've got a toll-free number. You've got, you know, forms you can fill out, all that fun stuff. You know, and it's easy to start depending on what people need. You know, if they're looking for full service brand management, you know, our clients generally start at maybe $750,000 on up in terms of gross revenue. You know, ad management, usually $5,000 a month and spending up. But you know, we'll do optimization and creative and content for anybody.
That's great stuff. That's great. We got to make you a regular on the show. We'll get you back on, because we touched on like 2 topics, and there's a million in the Amazon space that we could go over, but we'll get you back on for sure. And I encourage anybody out there who is looking to outsource a lot of this, they absolutely should get in touch with you. It's Page.One. Again, go reach out to Keith and the team. If you're out there and you're listening and you want to automate your advertising, Kris and I would love to talk with you about Slozo. We can give you a demo, show you how we can help automate all that for you. You can go to slozo.com and book a demo, or get started with a 14-day free trial right away. So I encourage everyone to do that. And if you like content like this and you want to hear a lot more of it, and you want to hear awesome people like Keith give tactics and tips in the Amazon space, make sure that you're following us everywhere that we're going live. We go live on Slozo's Facebook page, Slozo's YouTube channel, Slozo's LinkedIn page. You can like those pages and turn on notifications so you know when we go live. And of course, you can subscribe to our podcast, 2 Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Subscribe and leave a review. Come on, we know you're listening, so leave a review out there and let us know how we're doing. But again, all right. Well, next episode is 100, so we're cranking these along. Keith, we enjoyed having you.
You never forget your 99th, though.
That's right.
Never forget the 99th. That's good stuff. I love it. All right. Well, we'll be back at this again tomorrow. And Keith, thanks again for coming on with us.
I really appreciate you guys are great. I really appreciate having me on.